I feel like what the angels do is they kinda, like, highlight things for you. It's a very subtle highlight, though it's not like a bright highlighter, like a neon color, but it's just like this very gentle, very, very gentle color when they highlight something for you, and if you really tapped in, if you're really paying attention, you're awake and you know they're with you, it's like you get this subtle feeling, you get that, like, "Is that is that a highlight right there? 144."
Aspen Roots.
Welcome to another Aspen Roots podcast episode with Brandon and Sophia, where we tell true
Hello.
spiritual stories. And we are excited today to welcome Lyndon from Montana in the Rocky Mountains. Thank you so much for being here with us, Lyndon.
Hey, it's my pleasure, thank you so much for having me, both of you.
We're
Truly an honor and a
excited.
privilege.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with our story of how I met Lyndon, and then we'll jump into the stories that Lyndon came here to share with you all today. And so Lyndon and I are part of a spiritual group that's medical medium inspired on Facebook. And Lyndon was sharing a dream he had on there about medical medium one time. And you know me, I love dreams and getting guidance from dreams. And so I made a comment and I was like, hey, do you have any more details? I find that just like the medical medium information, details and dreams matter. And Lyndon wrote them all out, which I thought was super nice of you to do all that. And literally a day later, somebody had posted a 2-hour long video of one of the medical medium events where people are going up and shaking his hand just one after another for 2 hours. And for whatever reason, I clicked on the video and I was like, oh, 2 hours. And so I just clicked to somewhere in the middle of the video just to see, like, get some ideas of how it develops. And there's Lyndon walking on stage. I'm like, that's the guy from the picture that I was just talking to about his dream. Like, what are the odds I click into the middle of a 2-hour video and
Yep.
it's Lyndon?
Yeah.
So I made a comment about that and you were like, what does that mean? Does that mean we're soul brothers? And
Yeah,
instantly I was
right.
like, yes, yes, it does. I think
Yep,
that must
that's
be
right.
exactly what it means.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super
So
Amazing.
synchronistic.
I
huge
love it.
synchronicity. So super cool how that happened. And Lyndon is a health educator and a certified nutrition coach. He is the founder of Pure Success Nutrition. And people who work with him describe him as a soul healer and pioneer in health. And part of the Pure Success Nutrition, he runs group calls once a week for people to connect for their healing journeys. And it's a lot of medical medium stuff, but he brings in resources from all sorts of heart-based spiritual teachings. And it's really just a very supportive, loving space, always nice to be in, and a good group of people. So, we've been in a touch for a number of weeks through those group calls and looking forward to more of them each week. But, still getting to know Lyndon here. So he, as I've mentioned, is here with some stories about his healing journey. So you want to tell us a little bit about your healing journey, just a synopsis of a lifelong, crazy, detailed, intense path that will do an injustice to summarize, but we'll do it anyways.
Hey, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I was, never in great health growing up, but I sort of quickly learned when I became an adult, like, hey, all these medications and stuff I've been taking from all these doctors and conventional medicine, I was like, well, these don't seem to do anything for me at all. I just want to get healthier. I want to improve and eliminate my symptoms, eliminate my asthma. I had life threatening asthma that almost took my life several times when I was young. And I literally left my body. I remember leaving the planet one time and went to the gates of life another time. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. So, like, that must have just instilled faith in you or a sense of the divine, the otherworldly, whatever you want to call it, outside of yourself from a young age. How did that affect you going forward?
yeah. Well, I was raised religiously. And so I was raised with some sort of spiritual awareness or let's say acknowledgement. I don't know that that's awareness, but I always had like a sort of center of spirituality inside of me. But I turned away from religion and I never quite turned away from the idea of spirit and other worlds and just there being a layered sense of reality that not everybody is necessarily paying attention to.
Mhm.
So, yeah, having many of those kinds of experiences in my youth has definitely set me up to kind of always be on that path of searching and curiosity in the spiritual realm
Yeah.
and wondering what is it all about?
Right. Totally.
Wanting to know some truth.
Yes.
That's huge. I find the most spiritual people have the most curiosity.
Yeah,
It's a
truth
huge
seekers.
driver. Yeah,
Exactly, and
that's
that goes
great.
for everything, like health, I mean, just truth in life. What rings the bell of truth for you?
So you already mentioned going to the gates of life, is that what you called it?
Yes.
Tell me about that. What's the gates of life
Mhm.
like?
That was a very vague memory, but very tall, sort of almost concrete-like doorway. I call it gates, but it's a giant door. Yeah, the door is, I don't know, it's very tall for me. It was very tall, and yeah, I guess either you're done or you're not. So when you get to the gates, it's like, "Oh, well, hey, something happened and you're out of your body." But apparently, for me, that seems like that's where you get approved or not. It's like, "Hey, you're ready to go or not," you know. But
Mm.
they did not open for me, so I was just there briefly, and then that's really all I remember.
Okay,
Okay.
so I didn't see anybody and then you're back in your body?
No, exactly.
Mm. There's an important aspect of that with the vagueness of it. It's like all this other dimensional stuff when you're fully back here or mostly back here in the physical, that all turns into this dream like that you can barely remember. Dreams are like that too. So despite my best effort at memorizing the stuff I see, I learned if I don't write it down right away, then it just turns into pure vagueness. And it's like
Yeah, in
I'm
the
just
dream
going,
world. Mhm.
Mm,
just even like visions, meditations.
Mhm.
Yeah. So taking notes is important for me.
Yeah, me too.
So that all happened early on, right? The gates of life. Okay, because I have
yes.
a list of your stories here, and I kind of am seeing three sections. We have some stories from early on, and then there's a spiritual awakening, and then the stuff that came after you found medical medium. So you want to talk about some of the stories from that first phase when you were a kid. At one point, you're apparently telepathically speaking with your mom. Tell me about that.
It was just the briefest thing, but I was just lying down, about to go to sleep, and she was nearby, and she was across the room, and I was just thinking, "I hope it snows a foot tomorrow," you know? And I was thinking this, right? I was in my head. We weren't talking, there was no conversation, and then she said, "Really? You wish you wish it'd snow tomorrow?"
What?
And I was like, "What?" That was inside of my head. I know that was inside my head, like, I did
And she
not say anything,
responded out loud.
and she responded out loud.
Wow.
Wow.
Here's the crazy thing, though. The next day, I wake up, there's a foot of snow on the ground.
Oh, you
I
really
and I
Wow.
went and I measured it. I was 12 inches.
That's amazing.
wow. You
Wow, that's
manifested
so
it.
cool.
It's crazy.
So did you say out loud like, "Mom, how did you just answer me?" I said that in my head. Did she respond to
No,
that?
no, I didn't really. I was too freaked out. I was just, like, kinda in shocked and in disbelief. I was like, "How did she hear that?" Like, was she reading my mind, or was I sending that to her? Like, how did that happen?
Mhm.
Right. Have you
And
ever
I couldn't
asked
tell
her?
where it came from. No, I haven't. I never asked her, actually. Yeah, I don't know what her actual experience of that was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if she'd remember, but I'd be real curious to know her experience of that. If it sounded like it
I
was outside of
know.
her head or anyways, that's really cool. So you're like, "Whoa, that works. Guess I gotta be
Yeah.
careful of my thoughts from now on."
Yeah, right?
And when I want it to snow, I know what to do.
Too
Yeah.
cute. And how old were you in these next stories?
In the truck incident, let's call it, at that time, I was working at a camp in the mountains where I lived, and I was 23 years old at this point, working at the camp, and I had my girlfriend in the car, and we were just about to head up together to work because we were both working at this camp, right? And this kind of almost feels like maybe more guided or not sure. It's hard for me to draw the lines, honestly, between intuition and guidance. Is this an internal thing or is this coming externally? Or maybe it's the same thing,
Right, right.
Mhm.
sometimes. Who knows? So, anyway,
Mhm.
in that moment, something was telling me, hey, do you want something to drink, babe? We're just passing Starbucks here. Oh, my favorite coffee joint. Ugh. Sorry, that may come up another time. That may come up another time today, but
Okay.
uh, anyway, sarcasm there. Um, so we're passing up Starbucks, and she's like, yeah, sure, let's get something to drink because we have a few minutes." So I pass it up, and then I turn around and we go back, and that takes about maybe 5 minutes, and we get some drinks, and we're on the road back up the mountain. And this is a dangerous mountain, right? A big drop off, steep dives and everything, and steep grades and winding turns.
And what's the
So
general location?
this is near Lake Arrowhead, California, or Big Bear, if you're familiar with that. Most people are
Okay.
familiar with Big Bear, California.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so as we're headed partway up the mountain, all of a sudden traffic's slowing us down right ahead of us. It's like all of a sudden everybody's slowing down dramatically, and we come to almost a complete stop. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And we're just now creeping along and just coming around this bend, and we see in our lane, the lane that I was driving in, there was a truck that had nosedived from a higher road down and just boom, crushed like a
Oh.
sardine can. Like nobody would have survived in that thing, right?
Oh my
Like,
Oh my
goodness.
god.
yeah, yeah, just like a total nosedive, perfect nosedive into the road, smack dab into that lane that I was driving in. And
Oh.
yeah, so we're passing it up like everybody's like rubbernecking in this accident, and guess what? There's no emergency vehicles around, right?
Wow.
So this was
Mhm.
fresh. This was
Yep.
super fresh, and then, there was nothing to be done there, I don't think, but I guess I was so in shock, I didn't think about stopping to make sure somebody wasn't hurt or needing help or whatever, so we just kept going, and then, like, a couple minutes later, the sirens are coming, the ambulance and everybody's come down, so we beat the emergency crew. And so I was doing the math. I was like, based on, okay, how much time it takes the emergency crew to get down the mountain and how long it took somebody to call from the time that they landed. Man, that would have been really, really close call. Like if we just kept going straight up the mountain, we could have been hit or run into that thing freshly after the accident. I think the timing was just unbelievable when I think about it,
Wow.
how it worked
Yeah,
out.
s
That's so
so it's
cool.
almost like you're saying Starbucks saved your
I
life.
was gonna say the same thing. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah, but there's another thing where it was quite the opposite effect, let's just say.
Alright, let's drop a teaser, because that's, like, 2 things down on my list, and let's tell the truck at the red light motorcycle story, and then you can all look forward to his spiritual awakening coming up
Oh,
in a
cool,
second.
cool. Oh, this one's a real quickie anyway, so
Okay.
okay, yeah, so I used to drive an electric motorcycle, and I had so many close calls on that, honestly, like, I should have died probably 20 something times just on the motorcycle alone, let alone all the crazy, near death experiences I've had in my life. It's just, it boggles my mind every time I think about it. But just on that motorcycle alone, I had constant near death experiences. It seemed like weekly experience. So, but this one time that I'm remembering in particular, I was headed up a hill and I was just like, I had this sense of like, slow down. Something was telling me to slow down here.
Mm.
And so, okay, I laid back on the throttle a little bit and I took my time up the hill. And then right when I get up to the hill, I see this truck run a red light and he doesn't stop until he
Oh
hits right in the
no.
middle of the intersection. And I was like, the timing would have been really, really bad if I did not slow down. It would have been
Wow.
Wow.
it would have been a very near miss, if not just nailed me completely. Like that was perfect
Wow.
timing.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow,
I
well,
mean,
it sounds like you roll with
I
angels,
was gonna
and
say, yeah, it sounds like the divine is protecting you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Sophia and I are motorcycle riders ourselves,
Mhm.
And,
Oh,
I think with the motorcycles, we're just giving our angelic team like a full-time job and trying to keep us safe on those things
yeah,
sometimes. But,
yeah,
I'm going to
right.
tell this to you. I don't normally tell this because unless like you have this experience, I think it's one of those stories where people are like, "Oh yeah, uh-huh, okay, cool." But I tell Sophia all the time, I'm like, "Yeah, I just ride hard and I'm just having fun." And then I'll just get hit with this intuition that
Yeah.
I need to slow down. And I'll slow down and usually within like a mile, like I'll pass a cop or something like that. And
Mm,
it happens to me all the time. Like I can rely on that
Mhm.
intuitive hit of slow down on the motorcycle and it's very, very useful. Very useful.
Yeah, so we respect that when we're writing, if we have a feeling about things, for sure.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that story personally and your ability to notice it and listen to it. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that story.
yeah, for sure.
That brings us to your spiritual awakening. Let's hear about that.
Okay, so I was working at a very popular coffee chain in the United States at this time, and I was going to school full time. I also had another job, so I had 2 jobs, and I was doing really well at school, by the way. I was enjoying my life thoroughly. For the first time,
Nice.
I was becoming a social butterfly, making friends and just hanging out, and I was drinking a little bit too much sometimes, but, I was enjoying my
Mhm.
life. I had friends, and that was kind of a new thing for me in college. I was really kind of blossoming, and I was
Mhm.
getting good grades. I didn't have any problematic relationships in my life. Like, I'm just trying to paint this picture that this is not a guy that's set up for what some people in my life were like, "Oh, you just had a mental breakdown." Mental
Right.
breakdown happens to people under stress, like serious psychological stress and emotional difficulties, like emotional challenges. I was enjoying my life. I was having a good time. Yes, I was busy. I was working hard, but I wasn't failing. I was experiencing success in my life at that time is what I felt like. I was doing good, like straight A's in college and friends and everything. So I'm like, okay, that story doesn't add up when people just dismiss it by saying you had a mental breakdown. I'm like, what a lack of compassion and lack of curiosity that really is a shame for examining the story for something much deeper that it really
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my disclaimer for hey, mental health awareness, folks. Let's not dismiss people's mental health experiences as just some non-explanatory you just broke down mentally, like that's like it just randomly happens, no explanation, no cause, no reason, no rhyme. You just broke down, right? Like this
Right.
really it really doesn't do any service to helping really understand mental illness and what could be behind it, or what might not even be mental illness at all in some
I was
cases,
gonna
who
say
knows.
that. Yeah, like, who's to say it's mental illness? I think it's just a
Yeah,
label that society puts on things that they don't necessarily understand,
exactly.
so
Mhm.
Yeah, who knows where to draw this line. It's very difficult for people, but so anyway, I was having a good time, and I think there might have been some subtle changes that were happening in the days before, but in the course of a movie, I was watching a movie with some new friends, and it was Get Smart. And I was having this really weird twist of mind as I was sitting there watching this movie. I started slowly thinking that my friends were against me, and they were having me watch this movie Get Smart because they were trying to give me the message that the movie was giving to the main character. So I was kind of like confusing myself with this main character as though my friends were plotting something against me. Now,
And what was that
and
message?
yeah. Yeah, what was the
the
message?
message in the movie,
Yeah.
Yeah, that they're giving to the main character.
so basically, he's kind of this oblivious guy that doesn't really see himself for the dumb guy that he is, right?
Mm.
And so everybody kind of like is watching him be himself and do his thing, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's stupid." Everybody kind of disrespects him and thinks very poorly of him, and so he kind of like wakes up to this fact by the end of the movie, somehow or another. But by that time in the movie, I was like, okay, I'm not going to let this movie finish out and my friends finish this plot against me. So I got up, walked out of the theater, and then I waited for my friends. It was weird. I waited for my friends to finish the movie, and then as they came through, I, like, confronted them. I was like, "Okay, I know what's going on here. I know you're plotting something against me or whatever," and I must have freaked him out because, like, I don't think they were plotting anything. But I
Mhm.
felt I saw that I was twisted up here enough to know that, yeah, it's quite likely that there was really nothing there. But that was, like, the beginning, and then at that point, I I started having stranger and stranger experiences. I sort of just started losing touch with reality is how I perceived it, I was unable to figure out what was real and what wasn't, and all of a sudden, I was in a different world. It was like I was living in the book of Revelations in the Bible,
Mm.
Okay.
and yeah, and it was like I stopped eating and drinking because I thought the water had turned to blood, and I was having these experiences where I could read people's minds. I was convinced of that, and
You're
it was
convinced or you could?
how can I know, right? Like, how can I say, well, I was reading their minds because it was just things I was hearing, from people, and that's what I perceived it. And I kind of think now, after seeing all the other experiences and looking back through my life, I'm like, yeah, actually, that's quite possible. I've had other experiences that were similar. So now I don't really think that I have to question it as much. But back then, at that time,
Mm.
or let's say a few years after that, when I was thinking about it, I was certainly questioning it a lot. And I was like, was I actually reading people's mind? But it really felt like, yeah, I was hearing people's thoughts as I was walking around, random strangers too, not just people that I was close to or anything.
Wow.
And so was this, like, really loud in your head kinda thing, or how did you feel it, like, come in?
It was kind of like a sketch of what they were, not like exactly an entire complete thought at a time. It was kind of like a couple words here and there in this hollow space of experience. Is like a not like a
Mm.
normal space of thinking or listening or hearing. It wasn't like a voice out loud or anything, but it was like that, and it was like this also energetic sense, like I had got the feeling of how they felt in this interaction that I was having with them, like feeling
Mhm.
their feelings, kind of.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
And I have to ask too, since it was college, had you taken any psychedelic drugs previously or anything like that? Some people say that when they took, like, a psychedelic drug, then all of a sudden this stuff opens up for them.
I had not tried anything psychedelic to this point yet at all. In fact, the only thing I had done was a little bit of marijuana up to that
Mm,
point.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
saying something.
And were
yeah,
you high at all when the first episode happened, like, being paranoid?
no,
So,
no.
no.
Marijuana was a very occasional thing for me for a long time. So,
Gotcha.
um, yeah, so I went to the coffee shop one day as this was happening, and here I am with this like dessert of a drink that I don't need. Why did I even get this espresso? It's optional. It's waste of money. And it's just like the weight of the world kind of like falling on me, the materialism of it all in
Mm.
this one moment. I was just like, this is so wrong. So like my whole world in this episode sort of turned upside down, and I just saw everything is backwards in society all of a sudden. I was like, this is not the way to live. This is not the way to be as human beings. And I gave away all my possessions at that point.
Wow.
I gave away my
Mm.
car and my bike and all of my money. Like I I've got like a spiritual war to attend.
Yeah, right.
I thought I was like a savior or something. Like I was like on a mission. I was like, okay, I'm on a spiritual mission right here. And it was it was weird.
Well, I wonder too if it like, I believe in things called, like, entities, like a negative being maybe attached to you and was affecting your thoughts or affecting the way that you saw things.
And so that's a good point too, because I was seeing entities as
Okay,
well.
good. I'm glad you brought that up. So, when people say seeing, I always gotta clarify, like, did you actually saw with your eyes?
Yeah, now I wasn't seeing with my physical eyes. I was
Okay,
detecting them. I was noticing
okay.
that they were able to move through technology, electronics.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
they were coming through the technology, and I was freaked out, so I got rid of my cell phone, and I'm in a what was back then a Hollywood movie video box, the video stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They used to have video stores, guys. I don't know if
I kn
anybody's that old here, but
we
you
are.
get you
Like
go pick up a
like
disc or a
Blockbusters.
yeah, like a Blockbuster. You go pick up a disc, you drive to a store, you pay them money to rent a disc for a temporary amount of time, then you have to drive back to the store and you put it in their slot like a library, you know?
And you got home with it, and the person before you scratched it all up,
I
and you can't
Mm,
know.
skips around and
yep,
yeah.
yep, yep. So I put my phone in that slot because I was like, "What are these entities on my phone? I said, don't want this." So I
Oh,
just got
wow.
rid of it. I just dumped it at Hollywood Video.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Nice.
And
I got a free phone
Just,
full of
yeah, getting rid
entities.
of it. That's
I don't know why.
interesting. That's interesting, though. I've never heard that they can cross technology or, like, internet lines or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you saw entities in your phone, and do you see entities other places around people or just
Okay.
hanging out in spaces?
Trippiest, trippiest part about the entities, okay? And this blows my mind, and this is kind of what confirms it for me because 'cause I've gone back over this story in my head so many times over the years trying to figure out what in the world is this experience?
Mhm.
What the heck was happening? And, I had no memory issues, by the way, this entire time, like, no problem recollecting as far as I can tell. And so when I got to my dad's place, I just ended up there. I started walking, right? And I was just on a journey and I ended up there and I was sitting in their living room and the radio was on, right? They're always listening to the radio. It's 99.9. They're always listening to these oldies. Like music that I grew up with and I enjoyed, like R&B, soulful, rhythmic, good tunes that I was so familiar with, and I'd heard them so many times over the years. They never changed the songs they listened to. They always listened to the same stuff. So, listening to this radio station, hearing these songs that I was familiar with, knew inside and out, and the words were different. The
Really?
words
Really?
the words were coming through crystal clear, and they were singing about me in perfect
Hmm.
rhythm, in perfect
What?
time. All the instrumentation was the same. Everything else about the music was, say, the same, but I was tuned into something different there, and I knew it was the entities that were singing about me, and it was
Mhm.
the weirdest thing, right? I was like, "How can a human mind do that? That's not possible."
That would freak
Wow.
me out.
Well, and you
Yeah,
you mentioned it's a radio. It's like, do you think you were just, like, tuned into a different frequency?
yeah. I think, yeah, my brain function was changed so much that I was able to tune into parts of my brain that I'm not normally accessing, you
Mhm.
know?
Mm.
And different frequencies, yes, like you say, there's different frequencies, a different wavelength I was tuned into. There was another layer of reality, another dimension, however you want to describe that. But yeah, I was tuned into something else there, and it was where those entities were coming through from. They're not
Yeah.
from here. They're not from the same place that we're from exactly.
Yeah. So how did you handle that? Like, did you, like, freak out, or were you just like, "Oh, that's annoying," and, like, go in the other room? Like
Everything that was happening to me, fortunately, I was able to kind of like keep it contained inside me and not super freak.
Mhm.
Not tell
okay,
everybody, like,
good.
not go on a rambling, crazy
Mhm.
lunatic, you know, "You guys, the radio's singing about me," right? I wasn't doing anything like that. I was keeping it
Yeah.
together on the outside, but on the inside,
Mhm.
I
Wow.
was freaking out, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is going on? I gotta get away from this. Turn the station. This is not the right station." And then I turned it off, and I was like, "Holy crap." And
Wow. So
I didn't even wanna be around the radio at that point.
oh, I bet.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
bet. So, do you remember the lyrics by any chance?
I just remember that they were, like, singing about me, taunting me, describing my
Mm.
situation that I was going through at that time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
And so when all these things started happen that seemed pretty scary actually, because you didn't know what was going on, what did you do? Did you seek a mentor? Did you go to the hospital? Did you just talk to your friends?
Or you
you
tell
know,
nobody and keep it to
Or
yourself.
yeah.
people were on high alert about me. They were just keeping an eye on me. They're like, "Something's not right with Lyndon," because I was keeping most of it up here,
Okay.
fortunately. thank goodness, because if I was telling them what was happening to me inside my head, they would have probably, like, put me in a mental facility or something, but no,
Mhm.
I was just trying to figure it out, and I was like, I mean, I quit my job. I was just staying at my dad's place all of a sudden, and they were just watching out for me, and I was just doing all kinds of weird stuff, trying to figure out when I had died, like writing new music systems and language systems and, you know,
Hmm. Wow.
just trying to figure out, like, what has happened to me? Like, what is the reality? And then finally, I was like, "Okay, what can I be certain of?" Because I knew I had lost touch with reality, and
Mhm.
I had to find something to, like, start me over again. And I think this was really important right here. This is, like, key if somebody loses touch and they're, like, lost in between worlds or whatever, kinda like I was, you know, phasing in and out of the re of 3D in an
Mhm.
unhelpful way. And, I was sitting there writing, "Okay, what can I be sure of? What do I know more than anything? Like, for sure, what can I just" I had to guess still, like, I felt like I had to guess. I wasn't sure what reality was, so I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna guess what I could be sure of most that's real is my dad. My dad. I love my dad. He's my dad. And dad is Ron. And my mom is Pam, and I love her, and she loves me. And I could be certain of these things. And I listed my family members, and I was like, okay, they love me, and I love them, and that I can be pretty sure of.
Smart.
Like,
Smart that you
Yeah.
came up
that's
with that idea.
I don't know, yeah, but that was enough to kind of start to ground me mentally a little bit, give me some
Okay.
foundation because then I was starting from there, and it took weeks and months for me to, like, slowly, like, edge my way back into to reality, and I was just, like, going through this weird phase of, like, "Okay, I'm not working a job, people are watching out for me, they know something's weird, but they don't know what's going on." And, yeah, I just slipped right back into normal life and, like, kinda pretended like this isn't happening.
This makes me think of we listened to a guy who, astral travels and has done that all of his life, and he was describing, I believe it was 7 levels of the astral, and how, like, each level had certain beings and certain frequency of consciousness, and so I don't know, that's just what came to me when you were talking about all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing more from Medical Medium's spiritual book later this year,
Mm.
but I believe all
Yes.
that stuff is happening and that there's a good chance that you are just perceiving it.
Yeah,
Which
Exactly.
without having the background or the support or the framework or anything like that's like could be really rattling, like scary even.
Mhm.
Mm.
yeah.
And do you ever find that you're able to, like, tap back into that, or is this something that just happened and, like,
Now it's
that
Well,
was it?
unreachable.
Yeah.
not, certain aspects of it, yeah, but not like the full
Mhm.
experience exactly. I feel like it's
Not like
bits.
radios singing to you anymore.
Mhm.
No, fortunately, the radios are not taunting me anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, but,
Wow,
yeah,
holy moly.
as far as, like, having some spiritual vision that carries forward, yeah, there's definitely some of that.
Yeah.
So how are you changed by that whole experience? Or was it kind of just like a closed door, like that happened, it's in the past, and back to myself?
And like I said, I was trying to figure out for years what had happened. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, heavy metals definitely. Coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed things in the world as far as crops go. And I was getting it for free, working at this popular coffee shop, getting it for free, high dosages every day, eating the worst diet I'd ever eaten in my life. So I think like my energy was lowered. You know, it would have been a prime time for an entity or something to kind of come in and take advantage, like you described, Sophia. So with the
Yeah.
alcohol drinking and the amount of adrenal force I was putting out, you know, this would have been
Yeah.
weak. Hey, he's weak. Let's get him. You know.
I could see it being a factor, like a
Oh, for
stress
sure.
on your body. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a perfect storm for as far as my health goes. Like, you know, putting out all that effort and energy and getting free fast food constantly, just eating garbage nonstop. Yeah, for sure. Perfect storm
Yeah.
in general, though. But
Yeah.
the caffeine, I feel like the caffeine was a huge, yeah, a huge factor for sure.
Mhm.
And just roughly speaking, about how long ago is that?
This was when I was 23 years old, so that was, close to 16 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and so you asked, like, how has that impacted you
mhm,
since then? Um,
mhm,
and what it left me with was sort of social anxiety and a complete loss of my self-confidence and this feeling of detached and confusion and poorer health. Because then not long after that, my hair started falling out. Adrenal damage
mhm.
was apparent not long after that because like all my hair started falling out after that point.
Wow.
Oh, well, you've been able to turn it around. I mean, the person you are today is in touch with the divine and, in a very positive way and helping people, and that's your mission. That's like your soul's longing is to help people.
I'm very excited you just said what you just said because I was gonna speak up and say pretty much the same thing. I was gonna be like, "Look, I've never heard this part of Lyndon's story, and I know Lyndon now, and Lyndon is a leader. He's a
Mhm.
leader, compassionate leader, extremely knowledgeable with the work that he does, and this is just, what you're describing, how that affected you is like, you've pretty much done like a 180, maybe a whole 360 from there. And I'm, probably a good segue to medical medium because I'm guessing that he has a lot and his information has a lot to do with all that. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of healing from nature in general as well, but,
Mm,
before medical medium, but certainly coming into medical medium has taken my healing to unbelievable heights as far
Mhm.
as restoring my mind, getting clarity on sort of how to interpret that whole situation, getting back into like confidence and being able to like actually meet people and trust it because there was a complete loss of trust. So yeah, after some years of implementing the medical medium knowledge, learning from Anthony William, I've completely recovered from that dark space and that time of mental distress.
Yeah, and I'd say that you definitely got your self-confidence back because you are a public figure, you put yourself out there. That takes a certain level of self-confidence and willing to be seen and vulnerability. So I just
mhm.
really applaud you because after all you've gone through to be able to be vulnerable, that takes a lot of healing and that's a big personal journey. So I just honor you for being willing to share your story and then just healing from that and being able to have your self confidence back.
I'm really
Yeah.
honored by that, Sophia. Thank you so much for saying that.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I know it's
I feel
not
that.
easy. So, yeah, I mean,
I had some
yeah,
guidance there,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
definitely.
AW,
Yes.
Yeah,
AW, spirit of compassion, and the
yeah.
angels. So I know that you started developing a relationship with the angels post medical medium. So tell us a little bit about your relationship with the angels.
Yeah, so fortunately, I never quite disconnected from spirituality in general. Religion's one thing, but I was definitely in full faith, I guess, looking for answers to suffering, and I was at such a low point in my physical health. Obviously, my mental health was suffered too, but my physical health was just a whole new level, and so yeah, when I started tapping into medical medium and started learning about the angels, and I got that first book, I started contacting them immediately. I started
Awesome.
putting it out there all the time. Anytime there was a relationship issue, anytime there was food involved, that I any opportunity, like I went in it with full faith. Not just because I believed it right away and everything in it, but because I had carried faith into it. And I knew that this resonated with my experiences in the past, like all of my experiences. Like I'd always felt like, hey, how come I survived?
Mhm.
Like I'd almost died. This would be a 10-hour show if I had to tell you all the near death experiences in my life. I was being watched over, and the more I look back on my memories, I'm like, okay, I had been looked out for
Mm.
sure. So I was like, this confirms it. I know they've been there the whole time. And I was like, these are the people I need to talk to right here. So I started talking to them, and I saw results. Yeah, they are
Beautiful.
guiding. They give you information. They whisper things in your ear when you need to hear
Yeah.
them. They do the same thing for other people. They show you, they give you numbers, they guide you, and they are
Mhm.
with you 24/7 if you ask in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So along those lines, I'm sure you got many, but could you pull a story out to make an example of that?
There's so many, but more recently, I guess. So there's this angel of relationships, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'd spent many years single due to being ill. I was too sick. I was like, I can't date anybody. This is not a fun existence. I'm just gonna stay alone until I'm like healed enough and I'll be worth be worth dating at that point, be worth
Mhm.
pursuing relationships. So, ever since I learned about the angels, there's an angel of relationships that helps with relationships, not just in general, but also finding somebody special in your life. And I have used the angel of relationships. I've called upon the angel of relationships to sort out like minor conflicts that I've had along the way. So I knew that that was like something that had felt responsive and it's a presence. Let's just say it's a presence I'd felt in my life, working through things. But more lately, I met somebody that's very special.
Nice.
Uh, and
Congratulations.
Yeah, I feel like what the angels do is they kinda, like, highlight things for you. It's like you're going in your daily life, it's a very subtle highlight, though it's not like a bright highlighter, like a neon color, but it's just like this very gentle, very, very gentle color when they highlight something for you. It's like, "This person," they just, like, put a little color around that person for you, and if you really tapped in, if you're really paying attention, you're awake and they're with you, it's like you get this subtle feeling, you get that, like, "Is that is that a highlight right there? 144. Is that the who" "Who is this? Am I supposed to know this person? Let me talk to this person." So,
Yeah.
yeah, so just randomly online, I met somebody in the medical medium community, and I'd done this whole thing to prepare for it too. Y'all know Oliver Nino at all?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with his work, but I'm familiar with who he is.
Yeah, so he has this, this three-step, guide to kind of, like, finding your soulmate kinda thing, right? So
Mhm.
I actually follow this as well too, so I think it kinda, like, helps to really align you with what you're being guided towards, and it's a really cool process too. I highly recommend it to anybody who's, like, looking for, like, a special somebody in their life or whatever. So you write down all the people in your life who have ever hurt you, even if it was just something really small and insignificant, and you make a list, and I thought this list was gonna be tiny for me. I'm like, "Ah, nobody's hurt me in my life." But I
Hmm.
wrote all the small things down too. It was like, "Holy crap, this list is getting long." Like, just backhanded compliments or whatever you can think of. And so I made this list, and then you take this list and you make a little ceremony with it. You say, "I release all of the hurt and the
Mm.
pain that I have ever received from these people in my life, from all the people in my life, and I'm opening my heart and preparing for something new," something to this effect, like clearing myself energetically, clearing the space for good relationships and a good relationship in particular to have fertile ground to take root, you know, like those aspen roots. So, uh, so the next step is that you burn it. You burn the piece of paper symbolically. You sacrifice that. You free that energy up in that moment. And then
Mhm.
the third step is you write down everything that you would like to have in a partner. And
Mm.
I'm still amazed at like how much this person it fits like in the description that I wrote down. Like it blows my mind. I was like, holy crap. And then it was like a
Wow.
few months later after I write all this down and I'm praying to the angel of relationships and she shows up and it's still kind of early, so I'm not gonna say her name or anything, but I'm just like super excited and I feel like okay, this is exactly who I've been guided to. And
Very
anyway,
cool, very cool.
That's beautiful. Well,
It is
thank you, Angel of
beautiful.
Relationships, and I'm really happy you shared that whole, like, process with us. I'm like, "I wanna do that now." It's
yeah,
it's it's interesting to me. It's like getting rid of the hurt and betrayal and then moving into making room for what can take its place.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
manifestation.
Yeah,
yeah,
so the angels are powerful, and,
Yes, they
if
are.
anybody's curious of all the angels medical medium recommends, they're on M as in medical medium, mmfriendly.com. There's a whole section there that lists all the angels. I'm on there frequently. So I do want to introduce that part to our listeners. And normally, I've been doing a small intro of who Medical Medium is if you haven't heard of him yet. But I feel like that's going to start to get tiring for the people who listen to all of our episodes. So check out episode 10. Episode 10 is the Medical Medium episode if you want to learn more. But interlaced with everything we're talking about today is healing. And
Mhm.
healing is all encompassing through all the dimensions, spiritual all the way to the physical. And um, that's what the medical medium stuff is. It encompasses all of it. So I do want to make a comment about how you're talking about how like spirit highlights people. And that's another thing that I like only really explained to Sophia because I'm like, I don't think this is going to make sense to most people. But when I was in high school, I remember like first day of school, we had 1,200 people in our high school. There was a lot. It was a big school. And I remember like walking down the hallway, just passing like new faces, just a sea of new faces just passing you in the hallway in between classes. And they all go by with a blur, but I would like zero in and be like, that person. And they walk by and they're gone. And that was a highlight. That was spirit highlighting a person in my awareness that didn't even come back around till like 20 years later. That person wasn't part of my life then or during high school, but 20 years later, that person ended up coming back into our, both of our lives, Sophia and I, and being an important person. And that's just one example, but I know exactly what you mean by like being highlighted in different
Mhm.
ways. So it's really cool that you notice that because in a way, I believe this is happening for everybody, but it escapes the awareness of many people. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
why I'm happy you're on here telling these
totally.
stories so people can have confidence when it happens to them. Like, oh, that's what Lyndon was talking about. I just got that sensation,
Yep.
feels like a highlight. We'll see what happens. So,
Yeah.
And I feel like opening up to spirituality is about opening up to the subtle realms. And so these things are subtle unless you have like Anthony's gift or something like that. But it's about broadening our awareness so that we can access the subtle worlds and the subtle realities. And that's internal and external. So as we grow in our psychic gifts and or our awareness, I feel like that's just going to increase.
yeah. So at this point, let's move into our soulful send off where we share something from our hearts, from our souls. And I'll go first and just say thank you so much, Lyndon. I know it takes courage to be vulnerable and share this part of your history in a public
Mhm.
space, especially as a public figure. And I think it's really, really real of you. And I have a lot of
Yeah.
respect. And, a lot of these stories are from the past, but again, I want to highlight who you are now. Like you are such a leader. You're such an inspiration. You hold such a good space and
Yep.
presence, very compassionate to everybody in your
Mhm.
presence. And I have a lot of respect for you, how you hold yourself and your mission in this world, and how you're excited and you spread your excitement for nutrition based on the medical medium information. And I am honored to be your spiritual brother in this lifetime. And thank you so much for being on our podcast with us. It means a lot to
Mhm.
me.
Mm. So
I feel
beautiful,
that.
Brandon.
Yeah. I received that, and I'm honored, truly grateful to both of you. It means so much to me to hear that kind of recognition after, everything I've been through. And yeah, honestly, I haven't shared so many of these details and like the spiritual qualities. And maybe this is time for a change, with this little seed that we've planted here today. Maybe it's time for me to kind of wake up into that and be more present with that, because a lot of the things that we talked about here I don't talk about a lot, and it really deserves some credit because maybe it could help people.
Yeah,
So
I
anyway,
agree.
it's yeah, you two are amazing. I really appreciate you having me on here. It means a lot. Thank you.
Aw. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And
Thank you. Yeah.
when when you started talking about, maybe this is a new turning over a new leaf or however you said it, I got a bunch of chills. And for me, like
Nice.
truth always rides on the wings of chills. And, I'm not going to go into any details right now at this point, but I will say that like it's an important point to know that anybody can start being spiritual or waking up to the angels or the
Mhm.
light or the medical medium information, the divine. So
Yeah.
if there's anyone carrying guilt for how they've been in the past or actions they've done or whatever, I think it's important to not be shy about where we've been and what we've walked
Yeah,
through, and especially if it's like a totally different place than where we're at now. And that is the beauty, that you can be in these other spaces, head spaces, physical spaces, emotional spaces, whatever, and transform and move into higher
exactly,
vibrations
yeah.
through it all.
Yep, and that leads me into what I was gonna say for my soulful send off is that we all have a story and we all have a journey of where we've been, and it's not always happiness and pretty things, and there's a lot of suffering on this planet. And I just feel like if we can take those experiences and turn them into something positive, then we're serving the light versus taking those experiences and turning them into something where we beat ourselves up or we use it in a negative way. So really see your gifts as being born from, you know, a lot of times wounding is something we say, but also you turned what you experienced and what you walked through into a very positive frame of mind. And I see that's why you really want to help people because you understand where others don't. And that's a gift.
And I think that's why you have so much charisma and presence, because you've been through it and you've put in a lot of work for a lot of years, and
Yeah.
it shows. It really
Yeah.
shows.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, that's immense. That's really touching to hear that. Sophia, it's reflective of what you two are doing here too, inspiring this as a space to share like this, and the
Thank
voices
you.
that you're carrying and the message that you're delivering. You're on the forefront of a very important spiritual movement here, and what you're doing is so important, both of you. So I just want to say I believe in you. I just want to lift you guys up and support
Thank
you. And
you.
I hope everybody that's listening keeps listening to all of these podcasts and subscribe. And this is going to be amazing stuff. You're going to hear some great stuff from these guys because Brandon and Sophia are spiritual pioneers right here. And I really
I like
appreciate you
that.
both.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
I really feel that. And I know the angels are here, and we're just going to keep following the guidance and see what unfolds. So it's going
Yeah,
to
right.
be a journey. And you want to say a little bit more about the work you do, and then we'll name your website?
Yeah. So part of the reason why I haven't really shared a lot of this spiritual stuff is because I want to be able to help people that are really not that in touch with themselves spiritually as well. People at all levels. But also there is a lot of intuitive aspect that goes into what I do and, receiving guidance. So I help people on a basic level. I help them with making a strategy, like a comprehensive strategy for lifting their health up and getting back to like health confidence and health freedom, so they can live the kind of lives that they want to live. And that can be anything from creating a nutritional strategy with cleansing and supplements and herbs to rediscovering themselves through play and faith and movement and creativity and all the aspects of life that really help us heal in different ways. So I help people create plans to move them forward in different ways, but the focus is the nutrition, but that's not all there is, and there's so many ways for people to heal. I just want people to know there's so many things that we can do for our health, whether it be product recommendations, mindfulness hacks, meditation, and so the herbs and the supplements and the food is just one aspect of it, but there's so many ways to approach it for so many people. So when they get stuck, that's where we got to start looking and be more creative. So that's just a little bit about, I guess, what I do. Yeah, I like to be strategic and help people pave a way forward in the long term sense, create a real strategy to move the needle.
Awesome.
As listeners, you guys just got a taste of how well Lyndon articulates the stuff that he does. Check him out at puresuccessnutrition.com. And if you find him on social media channels, he's constantly posting videos about his work. And you always, just every time I watch one of your videos, the way you word stuff, I'm like, wow, like that is worded so perfectly. I love that. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear you teach and share your wisdom and knowledge. And I encourage anybody who's feeling the highlight of Lyndon to reach out and see how you
Mhm.
can turn around your life. So with that said, Lyndon, thank you so much for being on our
Yeah.
podcast. It's a really pleasure
Thank
to have
you.
you.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm.
Blessings.
Mhm.
Aspen Roots.
Visit us at aspenroots.love.